Number, the sharpest shot. The morning fog rolled off the Pacific, thick and gray, wrapping Naval Base Coronado in a shroud that seemed to muffle even the crash of waves against the pier. On the far side of the base, where the concrete gave way to sandy berms and painted steel targets, SEAL Team 7's qualification range was already alive with activity. Sniper Chief Victoria Brennan stood with her arms crossed, watching her team prep their rifles with the kind of casual precision that came from doing something 10,000 times. The annual marksmanship evaluation was more ceremony than test at this point. These men could shoot. That was the baseline. The question was always who would shoot best. Victoria herself had been Top Gun for 3 consecutive years. Her Mark 13 Mod 7 was an extension of her body, a tool she understood better than most people understood their own hands. At 39, with 14 years in the teams and one of only 12 women who had ever earned the Trident, she had fought twice as hard as any man here to earn every ounce of respect that came with her position. "Chief, we got some FNGs coming through today," said Petty Officer Lawrence Mitchell, nodding toward a group of younger SEALs huddled near the armory, straight out of Green Team. "Still got that new guy smell." Victoria grunted. "Let them watch. Maybe they'll learn something." That was when she noticed the janitor. Sarah Keller moved like a shadow. Thin, unremarkable, dressed in navy blue coveralls with a base maintenance patch on the shoulder. She pushed a wheeled cart loaded with cleaning supplies, stopping every few yards to pick up spent brass casings that glinted in the weak morning light. Her face was weathered but unreadable. Pale blue eyes set in a narrow face that might have been 32 or 48. Nobody paid her any attention. That was how Sarah liked it. She had been working this job for 2 years now. 2 years of emptying trash cans, mopping floors, wiping down benches. 2 years of being invisible. The SEALs who trained here barely registered her existence. She was furniture, background noise, part of the base infrastructure like the flagpole or the fire hydrants. And that suited Sarah just fine. She bent to retrieve a handful of casings near the firing line. As she straightened, her eyes flicked, just for a second, toward the table where the rifles lay arranged like surgical instruments. The Mark 13. She knew that weapon better than she knew her own reflection. "Hey, janitor." Victoria's voice cut through the morning air, sharp and dismissive. "You're in the way. Clear out." Sarah nodded once, no eye contact, and wheeled her cart toward the edge of the range. As she moved, she heard Mitchell laugh. "Chief, you think she even knows what those things are?" "Probably thinks they're power washers," Victoria said, loud enough to carry. The other SEALs chuckled. Sarah kept walking. She had heard worse. From the corner of her vision, she watched as Victoria lifted her rifle, checked the scope, adjusted the turret with the kind of theatrical confidence meant for an audience. Everything the woman did was performance. Sarah recognized the type. Skilled, yes, but convinced her skill made her untouchable. That kind of thinking got people killed. Sarah pushed her cart into the storage shed and paused, hidden in shadow, watching through the open door. The qualification range stretched 1,500 meters to a cluster of steel targets shaped like human silhouettes. It was a difficult shot, especially with the crosswind that came off the ocean this time of morning. But not impossible. Never impossible. By noon, the range was packed. The new guys had arrived, a half-dozen fresh-faced SEALs who carried themselves with the particular blend of confidence and anxiety that came from knowing they had made it through hell but still had everything to prove. Victoria made a show of greeting them, shaking hands, clapping shoulders. She was good at this part, the mentorship theater. Sarah watched from a bench near the armory where she was supposed to be organizing cleaning supplies. Nobody questioned why it was taking her so long. "Gentlemen," Victoria said, her voice carrying across the range like a sermon, "what you're about to see is the standard you're held to. SEAL snipers are the best in the world. Not because we're born different, but because we train harder, think sharper, and shoot cleaner than anyone else breathing." She picked up her rifle, cradled it with practiced care. "This is the MK-13 Mod 7. 7.62 NATO, effective range 2,200 meters in the right hands. In my hands." The new guys nodded, solemn, reverent. One of them, a kid named Brandon Walsh, who looked maybe 23, glanced around the range, taking it all in. His eyes landed on Sarah, still crouched by the supply crate. And then Walsh noticed something. The way Sarah was handling a cleaning rag. Not wiping, exactly, but moving it in a specific pattern across the barrel of a rifle someone had left propped against the wall. 3 strokes down the length, then a circular motion at the crown, then back again. It was the exact sequence any trained sniper learned for cleaning a precision weapon without damaging the rifling. Walsh frowned. "Hey," he said, his voice uncertain, "you know how to take care of these?" Sarah looked up. For a moment, their eyes met. Sarah saw the curiosity there, the beginning of a question. She could let it go forward, or she could kill it now. "Just trying to keep things clean, sir." "Sir," Walsh repeated, confused. "I'm not an officer." "Force of habit," Sarah said quietly, and went back to her work. But Walsh kept staring. There was something off about the janitor, the way she moved around the weapons, the way she positioned herself so she could see the entire range without appearing to watch. Small things, easy to miss. Unless you were trained to notice small things. "Walsh," Victoria snapped. "You with us?" "Yes, Chief." "Then pay attention. What I'm about to show you is why only SEALs shoot that sharp." She settled into position behind her rifle, theatrical and precise. The new guys gathered around, watching as she made minute adjustments to the scope. Victoria was good at drawing out these moments, making them lessons. Sarah had seen it before. The woman wasn't just showing off her skill. She was reinforcing the mythology, the idea that they were all part of something extraordinary. And they were. Sarah wouldn't take that away from them. These men had earned their place, but mythology was dangerous when it blinded you to reality. Victoria fired. The suppressed crack of the rifle was followed by the distant clang of a hit, dead center on the 1,500-meter target. The new guys murmured appreciation. "That's how it's done," Victoria said, standing. "Questions?" Nobody had questions. They just wanted to be her. It was pure accident, what happened next. Or maybe it was fate. Sarah had learned to stop trying to figure out which. One of the new guys, an eager kid named Christopher Jensen, was setting up for his qualification run when his rifle jammed. Not a serious malfunction, just a failure to extract. The kind of thing that happened when you were nervous and didn't seat the magazine correctly. Jensen stood there, red-faced, fumbling with the charging handle, while Victoria watched with the patient disdain of someone who had seen this 1,000 times. "Problem, Jensen?" "Jammed, Chief. I don't." "Lock the bolt back," Sarah said. Everyone turned. Sarah was standing maybe 10 feet away, a trash bag in one hand. She hadn't meant to speak. The words had just come out. Automatic, the way they used to when she was training junior shooters. "What did you say?" "The bolt," Sarah said quietly, already regretting this. "Lock it back, check the chamber, then reseat the magazine with a firm strike." The extractor probably slipped. Jensen, desperate, followed the instructions. The rifle immediately cleared. He looked at Sarah with something like amazement. Victoria stepped forward, her whole posture radiating controlled anger. "You think you know weapons?" Sarah said nothing. She had learned long ago that silence was safer than explanation. "I asked you a question, Janitor." "Just trying to help," Sarah said. "Help?" Victoria made it sound like an insult. She walked closer, and Sarah could smell the gun oil on her hands, see the tiny scar above her left eyebrow from some old deployment. "You want to help? Then stay out of the way and let the professionals work." Sarah nodded and turned to leave. "But hey," Victoria called after her, her voice dripping with mockery. "If you really think you know your way around a rifle, why don't you show us? We got a Mark 13 right here, 1,500 meters. Should be easy for an expert like yourself." The range went silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Sarah stopped walking. She could feel every eye on her, could hear the blood moving through her veins. This was a bad idea, a terrible idea. She should walk away, let Victoria have her moment, go back to being invisible. But something in the woman's tone, something in the casual cruelty of it, touched a nerve Sarah thought she had killed years ago. She turned. "I don't think that's a good idea, Chief." "Why? Scared you'll embarrass yourself?" "No," Sarah said softly. "Scared I won't." The words hung in the air between them. Victoria's eyes narrowed, trying to read her, trying to figure out if this was a bluff or something else entirely. Mitchell spoke up, his voice uncertain. "Chief, maybe we should." "No," Victoria said, her eyes never leaving Sarah's face. "I want to see this. Come on, Janitor. Show us what you got." Sarah stood very still, weighing the options. Walk away and stay invisible, or step forward and shatter everything she had built over the last 2 years. She thought about her daughter, about the promise she had made. Then she thought about Victoria's face, the dismissal in her eyes, the assumption that someone in coveralls couldn't possibly know the first thing about precision shooting. The anger won. "All right," Sarah said. "One shot." She walked to the rifle table, aware of every eye tracking her movement. The Mach 13 lay there, familiar and terrible, like seeing an old addiction laid out in front of her. Her hands moved automatically, checking the rifle with the kind of efficiency that came from muscle memory so deep it was almost genetic. Victoria watched with increasing wariness. "You seem to know your way around that weapon." "I've seen them before," Sarah said neutrally. She settled into position behind the rifle, and it was like coming home to a house that had burned down. Everything was familiar and wrong at the same time. 1,500 meters, Victoria said. "Center target. One shot." Sarah found her natural point of aim. The scope picture came up clear and sharp. 1,500 meters was nothing. She had made shots twice that distance in worse conditions. But that was another life, another person. She ran the calculation automatically. Wind speed, humidity, barometric pressure, the slight cant of the rifle, the way the morning sun would affect the mirage at this distance. All of it processed in the space between heartbeats. She breathed, found the pause between breaths where her body was still, and pressed the trigger. The rifle cracked. The suppressor reduced the sound to a sharp snap that echoed once and died. 1,500 meters downrange, the steel target rang like a bell. Dead center. Sarah set the rifle down carefully and stood up. She didn't look at Victoria, didn't look at any of them. She just started walking back toward her cleaning cart. "Wait." Victoria's voice was different now. Quieter. Thoughtful. Sarah stopped but didn't turn around. "That was a world-class shot," Victoria said. "Hell, that was better than world-class. I need 5 seconds to set up properly and you just did it cold." A pause. "Who are you?" "Nobody," Sarah said. "Just the janitor." "Bullshit." Victoria walked around to face her. Up close, Sarah could see the intelligence in the woman's eyes, the questions forming. That shot required training, years of it. That wasn't luck. Sarah met her gaze and said nothing. "Fine," Victoria said. "Don't tell me, but I'm going to find out." 3 hours later, Victoria sat in her office staring at a file on her computer screen. It had taken exactly 2 phone calls to get it. One to base personnel, one to a contact at JSOC who owed her a favor. The file was labeled Keller, Sarah J., classification, redacted. She scrolled through the heavily censored document. Most of it was blacked out, but what remained told a hell of a story. Marine Corps Scout Sniper School. Honor graduate. Assignment to Marine Special Operations Command. 2 deployments to Afghanistan, 3 to Iraq. Sniper team leader. Confirmed kills. Redacted. And then, buried in the middle of the file, a single line that made Victoria's blood run cold. Call sign, Phantom Angel. Victoria leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. Phantom Angel. She had heard that name before, whispered in the kind of conversations that happened late at night in places where warriors gathered. A female sniper who had operated in Helmand Province during the worst of the fighting. They said she could shoot through walls. They said she had never missed. They said she had killed more high-value targets than any 3 sniper teams combined. They also said she had disappeared. The file confirmed it. Medical discharge, 3 years ago. Reason, redacted. Current status, civilian. Victoria picked up her phone and called Mitchell. "Get me everything you can on Sarah Keller. Former Marine, sniper, discharged 3 years back. And do it quietly." She hung up and stared at the file for a long time, trying to figure out what kind of warrior ended up pushing a mop. The next morning, Sarah arrived at work to find Victoria waiting by her locker. "We need to talk," Victoria said. "I have floors to clean." "The floors can wait." Victoria's voice was firm but not unkind. "Please." Sarah hesitated, then nodded. They walked together to the far side of the base, to a concrete bench overlooking the ocean. The waves crashed against the rocks below, filling the silence between them. "Phantom Angel," Victoria said finally. Sarah's face showed nothing, but her hands tightened slightly on the edge of the bench. I made some calls, Victoria continued. Your file is mostly redacted, but I got enough. Marine Special Operations. Scout Sniper. 73 confirmed kills, probably twice that many unconfirmed. That's classified, Sarah said quietly. Yeah, well, I have the clearance. Victoria turned to look at her. What I want to know is why the best sniper to come out of the Marine Corps in the last 20 years is working as a janitor on my base. Sarah was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible over the sound of the waves. I made a promise. To who? My daughter, Emily. Sarah's voice caught slightly on the name. She was 8 when I made my last deployment. I missed her birthday, missed her school play, missed her first day of 3rd grade. And when I came home, she looked at me like I was a stranger. Victoria waited. The things I did over there, Sarah continued, the shots I took, the people I killed, they were all bad people, terrorists, murderers. I know that, I believe that, but it doesn't change the fact that I took lives. 73 lives. And I was good at it, too good. She turned to face Victoria, and there were tears in her eyes now. Emily asked me why I was always gone. I tried to explain, tried to tell her I was keeping people safe. She was quiet for a minute, and then she said, "But you're not keeping me safe. You're never here." Sarah wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. So I promised her, no more deployments, no more killing. I would find a job where I could be home every night, where I could make her dinner and help her with homework and be the mother she deserved. I would be invisible, unremarkable, safe. And you ended up here, Victoria said. And I ended up here. Sarah gave a bitter smile. Turns out, the only thing I'm actually qualified for in the civilian world is cleaning. No college degree, no civilian job training. Just a very particular set of skills that aren't useful for much outside of a war zone. Victoria absorbed this. Your daughter, how old is she now? 11. Almost 12. She wants to be a veterinarian. Sarah's voice softened. She's brilliant, kind, everything I'm not. That's not true, isn't it? Sarah met her eyes. I've killed more people than most soldiers see in their entire career. How does someone like that come home and be normal? Be a mom? Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she said, my father was a sniper in Vietnam, came home with 3 Purple Hearts and more demons than he knew what to do with. Spent 10 years drinking himself to death before my mother kicked him out. She looked out at the ocean, but then something changed. He got sober, got a job as a carpenter, started showing up to my soccer games. And you know what I remember most about him? Not the medals, not the drinking. I remember him teaching me how to build a birdhouse. I remember him making pancakes on Sunday mornings. I remember him being there. She turned back to Sarah. What I'm saying is, you're not defined by the worst thing you've ever done. You're defined by what you choose to do next. Sarah nodded slowly. I appreciate that. I do. But I made a promise to my daughter, and I intend to keep it. I'm done being a warrior. Fair enough, Victoria said. She stood up. But for what it's worth, you're one hell of a shooter. Best I've ever seen, if I'm being honest. And I've seen a lot. Sarah smiled slightly. You're pretty good yourself, Chief. They shook hands, and Sarah thought that might be the end of it. A brief intersection of 2 lives, a moment of understanding, and then back to their separate worlds. She was wrong. The attack came 3 weeks later. Sarah was in the armory building, replacing light bulbs and trying not to think about the fact that Emily's school play was in 2 days, and she had promised to be there early to help with costumes. The building was old, converted from a World War II ammunition storage facility, and the electrical system was a nightmare of outdated wiring and flickering lights. She was up on a ladder, her hands full of fluorescent tubes, when she heard the first explosion. The building shook. Dust rained down from the ceiling. Sarah's first instinct, the one drilled into her by hundreds of hours of combat, was to drop flat and find cover. But she was 8 feet up on an aluminum ladder, so she did the next best thing, which was to control her descent and land in a crouch behind a stack of equipment crates. More explosions, automatic gunfire, shouting. Sarah's mind shifted into combat mode instantly. Her civilian self, the one who made pancakes and braided hair, stepped aside to let the warrior through. She moved to the window and looked out carefully. The qualification range was under attack. At least 6 hostiles, dressed in civilian clothes, but moving with military precision. They had come through the south fence, probably cut the wire during the shift change when security was thinnest, and they were moving toward the SEAL compound. Sarah saw Victoria and her team pinned down behind a concrete barrier, returning fire but clearly outgunned. One of the SEALs, Mitchell, was down, clutching his leg. Another, Walsh, was trying to drag him to safety while Jensen provided covering fire. They were good, but they were caught in the open with no cover and no backup yet visible. Sarah turned and ran to the armory cabinet. It was supposed to be locked, but she had noticed weeks ago that the mechanism was faulty. A hard pull in the right spot would pop it open. She pulled. The door swung wide. Inside was a Mach 13 Mod 7, exactly like the one she had fired on the range. Loaded, ready. Sarah stared at it. She had promised Emily, no more killing, no more war. But through the window, she could see Victoria dragging Mitchell behind the barrier, could see the attackers advancing, could see the moment when everything would go wrong. She thought about her daughter, about the promise. Then she thought about Victoria's words, "You're not defined by the worst thing you've ever done. You're defined by what you choose to do next." Sarah grabbed the rifle. The range to the man with the RPG was approximately 1,200 meters. Not an impossible shot, but difficult, especially with the target moving, especially with lives on the line, especially with 2 years of rust on skills that used to be razor sharp. But Sarah had done harder shots in worse conditions. She settled into position at the armory window, found her natural point of aim. The scope picture came up clear. She could see the attacker's face, see the determination there, see the finger moving toward the trigger of the launcher. Wind, 7 miles per hour, maybe 8. Coming from her 2 o'clock, she dialed in 1/2 mil of holdover, then a bit more for the distance. Breathe, slow, steady, find the pause. She pressed the trigger. The suppressed crack of the MK-13 was followed by the sound of the RPG clattering to the ground 1,200 meters away. The attacker fell, and Sarah was already moving, cycling the bolt, finding the next target. 3 more attackers. 2 near the ammunition building, 1 trying to flank around toward the SEAL compound. Sarah took them in order of threat priority, the calculations running automatically in a part of her brain that had never stopped being Phantom Angel. Second shot, 1,100 meters, moving target, lead him, breathe, press, down. Third shot, 1,300 meters. Target behind partial cover. Wait for him to expose himself. There. Press. Down. Fourth target was running now, smart enough to realize someone was shooting his team, but not smart enough to realize you don't run in a straight line when a sniper has you zeroed. Sarah led him by 3 body lengths, accounting for the wind, accounting for the movement, breathed, pressed. The running stopped. 4 shots, 4 targets. Approximately 18 seconds from first trigger pull to last. Sarah set the rifle down carefully and stepped away from the window. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline and muscle memory warring with 2 years of trying to forget how to do this. She heard boots pounding up the stairs, heard Victoria's voice shouting her name. The door burst open. Victoria stood there, weapon ready, her face streaked with dust and sweat. Behind her, Walsh, Jensen, and half the SEAL team. They stared at Sarah, stared at the rifle, stared at the 4 bodies visible through the window. "Holy hell," Walsh breathed. Victoria walked slowly to the window, looked out at the targets, looked at the distances. When she turned back to Sarah, there was something in her face that looked like awe. "You just saved my entire team," she said quietly. Sarah nodded. She couldn't speak yet. Her throat was too tight. "That was..." Walsh paused, searching for words. "That was the most incredible shooting I've ever seen." "That was Phantom Angel," Victoria said. She looked at Sarah with new understanding. "Welcome back." But Sarah shook her head. "No, not back. Just this once. Because people needed help." She walked toward the door, her legs feeling heavy, her mind already trying to process what she had just done. 4 more deaths added to her count. 4 more faces she would see when she closed her eyes. But also, Victoria alive, Walsh alive, Mitchell and Jensen and all the others, Alive because Sarah had been in the right place at the right time with the right skills. Maybe Emily would understand that. Maybe. That evening, Sarah sat in her small apartment, waiting for Emily to come home from her friend's house. The TV was on, showing news coverage of the attack on the naval base. 4 attackers killed by base security forces. No mention of a janitor with a rifle. She heard the key in the lock. Emily burst through the door, backpack swinging, her face bright with excitement. "Mom, you won't believe what happened at school today." Mr. Peterson brought in his dog, and she stopped, seeing Sarah's face. "What's wrong?" Sarah tried to smile. "Nothing, honey, just a long day." Emily dropped her backpack and came over, her face serious with the kind of concern that broke Sarah's heart. "You look sad." "I'm okay, really." "Did something happen at work?" Sarah took a deep breath. She had promised herself she would never lie to her daughter. "Yes, something happened, but everyone is safe now." Emily studied her with those 2 intelligent eyes. "Did you have to be a soldier again?" The question hung in the air between them. Sarah wondered how much her daughter understood, how much she had pieced together from overheard conversations and the carefully redacted explanations Sarah had given over the years. "Just for a little while," Sarah said softly. "Some people were in danger. I helped them." "Did you?" Emily hesitated. "Did you hurt anyone?" Sarah pulled her daughter close. "I stopped some bad people from hurting good people. That's all I can say." They sat together on the couch for a long moment. Then Emily said, "I'm glad you were there to help them, but I'm also glad you came home." "Me too, baby. Me too." 2 weeks later, there was a small ceremony in the SEAL compound. Nothing official, nothing that would go in any records. Just Victoria and her team, gathering at the range in the early morning light. They had made a plaque. Simple, understated, exactly the kind of thing Sarah would have wanted if she had wanted anything at all. It read, "The sharpest shot ever fired on this range, December 2025. They had mounted it on the wall of the range, right next to the 1,500-meter line. Sarah stood there, looking at it, not sure what to feel. Victoria had tried to get her reinstated, tried to get her back into active service, but Sarah had declined. Her place was with Emily, with the quiet routine that kept the worst memories at bay. But she appreciated the gesture. "You know what the new guys are saying?" Walsh asked, standing next to her. "What's that?" "They're saying we should treat everyone on base with respect, because you never know who might be a legend in disguise." Sarah smiled slightly. "Good lesson." "The best lesson," Victoria corrected, walking over. "Better than anything I could have taught them." She held out her hand. "Thank you, Sarah, for everything." They shook hands, and for a moment, it was just 2 warriors acknowledging each other. No rank, no pride, no ego, just mutual respect. "You going to be okay?" Victoria asked quietly. "Eventually," Sarah said. "I always am." She turned to leave, but Mitchell called out. He was still on crutches from his leg wound, but healing well. "Sarah? One more thing." Sarah looked back. "If you ever want to come out here and shoot with us, just for fun, you're always welcome." Sarah considered that for a long moment. Then she nodded. Maybe someday, when it doesn't hurt so much. As she walked away from the range, she heard Jensen talking to one of the other new SEALs, their voices carrying on the morning breeze. "You see that janitor? Don't ever disrespect her. That's Phantom Angel, man. That's a living legend." "No way. That lady? I'm telling you. I saw her shoot. 4 targets, 4 shots, all over 1,000 meters, while we were pinned down. She saved our lives." "What's she doing as a janitor then?" There was a pause. Then Jensen said, his voice thoughtful, "I think she's doing exactly what she needs to do. And maybe that's the bravest thing of all." Sarah smiled to herself and kept walking. Behind her, the sun climbed higher, burning off the morning fog. The base came alive with the sounds of training, of men pushing themselves to be better, stronger, sharper. The sounds of warriors preparing for battles they might never fight, against enemies they might never see. And in the middle of it all, invisible and essential, Sarah Keller pushed her cleaning cart and remembered that there were many ways to serve, many ways to be strong, many ways to honor the fallen. Sometimes the sharpest shot was knowing when not to take one at all. But when the moment came, when lives hung in the balance, When the choice was between breaking a promise and letting good people die, well, that was when legends proved they were more than stories. That was when janitors became warriors one more time. And that was when Victoria Brennan learned the most important lesson of her career. Respect everyone, trust the quiet ones, and never ever assume you know someone's story just by looking at them. Because sometimes, the most dangerous person in the room is the one nobody notices at all. Asterisk, asterisk, epilogue, asterisk, asterisk. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the back of a middle school auditorium, watching Emily take the stage in a veterinary science competition. Her daughter spoke confidently about animal care and compassion, about the responsibility that came with healing. Victoria was there too, sitting a few rows ahead in civilian clothes. When Emily finished her presentation to thunderous applause, Victoria turned and caught Sarah's eye. She gave a small nod of respect. Sarah nodded back. That evening, as Sarah tucked Emily into bed, her daughter said, "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Always." "That lady who came to my presentation. She's your friend from work, right?" "Yes. She seems nice. But also, kind of scary." Sarah laughed. "Yeah, she's both." "Like you," Emily said, and there was no judgment in her voice, just acceptance. Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead. "Get some sleep, baby." As she turned off the light and closed the door, Sarah reflected on the last 6 months. She was still a janitor, still invisible to most people who passed her in the hallways, still cleaning up after others and pushing her cart from building to building. But now, when she passed the shooting range and heard the crack of rifles, she didn't flinch quite as much. When she saw Victoria and her team training, she felt pride instead of pain. And when she went home each night to help Emily with homework and make dinner and listen to stories about school, she knew she had made the right choice. Both choices. The promise she made to her daughter would always come first. But she had learned that being a good mother didn't mean pretending she had never been a warrior. It meant showing Emily that strength came in many forms, that protecting others was noble, and that the hardest battles were often the ones fought within yourself. Sarah Keller, once known as Phantom Angel, once the sharpest shooter in the Marine Corps, was learning to be both things at once: a legend and a mother, a warrior and a woman who made pancakes on Sunday mornings. And maybe, just maybe, that was the sharpest shot of all: knowing when to pull the trigger, and when to lay the rifle down, and go home to the people who needed you most. The people who loved you, not for the medals you earned or the enemies you defeated, but simply for being there, day after day, steady and true. That was the shot that mattered. That was the one she would never miss.